We're going to learn how to do a lapped zipper application now. So if you want to look back at my centered zipper application video to get some more details, that might be helpful for you. But we're going to start out the same way with our two 4x10 pieces of sample fabric with the edges already serged. So you're going to place them together. Do the same thing we did last time, where we mark up 2 inches from the bottom and make a little chalk mark here. And we're starting out again with just a regular polyester 7-inch zipper. So the first thing you want to do is pin your edges together. Always remember to pin perpendicular to the seam that you're sewing. And you're going to do the same thing as last time with a centered application, where we started out with basting. So crank your stitch length up to as high as it'll go. And you don't have to backstitch on this part. Your zipper foot should already be on your machine to the right here. So we can be ready in just a minute to do our zipper application. I would do slightly larger than 5/8, so just a little bit bigger than last time, just to make it a little bit easier to put your lap zipper in. But baste from the top down to our chalk marking. Once you've basted from the top all the way down to your chalk marking, you can change your stitch length back to a regular stitch length. For our purposes is 2.5, and you can backstitch here at the chalk marking and just sew down to the bottom and then backstitch again. And then you can take it over to the iron and press your seam open. Now that you've gotten it pressed open, you can just get one layer out so you can open up your zipper and place the coils down alongside of your seam, and just make sure you're on the basted end, not the end that we're stitched up here. I would pin this down a little tiny bit to the right of the seam, and you'll see why in a minute. Just place your pins perpendicular all the way down. Once you've gotten it pinned all the way down, you're just going to turn your machine back to basting. Remember, basting is a temporary stitch, so you want to put your stitch length all the way up, and you don't need to backstitch here. So you're just going to go right down the middle of the zipper tape, all the way down to the bottom. I like to take my pins out as I go. And the zipper foot is off to the right so that your zipper is not getting caught on the presser foot. Now that it's basted all the way down, what you're going to do is create a little fold on the other side. You can go ahead and zip this back up. And you're going to put pins in perpendicular again, right here. And you're going to be stitching right in the middle of this fold here. So you're going to pin it all the way down. And I actually need to switch my zipper foot to the other side so that it'll be out of the way on this side. And then I'll put it back when we do the last step. Now that I have my zipper foot on the other side, I need to move my needle over so that the needle doesn't come down on the zipper foot and just snap off. So to do that, you can just adjust your stitch width. And so I'm just going to scoot it all the way over to as far to the right as it can go. And I'm going to switch to regular stitching, so just 2.5. And the back stitch at the top. And then you're going to stitch all the way down to the bottom, just in the middle of that little tiny fold that you've made. Now that you've gotten your stitch sewn in the little fold here all the way down, you can close the fabric on top of your zipper like this, and then put your pins in perpendicular. I'm going to actually start at the stop and put my pins in this way, and you'll see why in a minute. Then you're going to straddle the teeth with your pins, just like we did for the centered zipper application. All the way up. You do want to make sure you have one pin right under the stop, so just feel for it with your finger and put a pin right there. That's where we're going to start this time. So our zipper foot is off to the left right now, and our needle's all the way over to the right. The last thing we need to do before we sew, our final step, is to get some 1/2-inch scotch tape and just get a piece long enough to cover the whole stitching area between the stop and the top of our sample here. And this time, instead of positioning it straight over the middle of the seam, we're going to go off to the right side here. You might let a tiny bit overlap the seam on this side, but for the most part you want it all over to the right, because otherwise your zipper pull is going to get in the way when you're sewing. So you've got to be careful of that when you get here at the top. I'm going to start sewing down here at my stop, right under this pin. And I don't want to backstitch here because that's just going to leave an ugly mark at the bottom of our zipper. So I want to make sure it's right in the right spot. And I want to start sewing. You can go ahead and take that pin out. You don't really need it there anymore. And just do a couple stitches. You can even hand crank the last one or two to make sure you get as close to the very, very edge of the corner as you can. Lift your presser foot, pivot, and keep sewing. And you're going to follow the edge of this tape, being careful not to catch the tape in your stitching, all the way up to the very top, backstitch, and that'll be the last part we have to sew for this. I've gotten it sewn all the way in my little L shape here, and the last couple of steps are you can pull at the bottom here your thread to the inside, so if you just kind of tug on it a little bit, you can pull that loop from the other side to the back and hand tie off some knots. That just allows us to not have to backstitch here and leave that ugly mark on the outside of our zipper at the bottom. You can backstitch if you want to, but this is how it's recommended that you do it. And then you can take out your basting stitches and you'll be finished. Once you've taken out all of your basting stitches, you are finished. And that's your lap zipper application.